And you would not think in 2021 we don't actually know how bone mineralization occurs, but we don't. We know that the mineral is produced by a specific type of bone cell, and we think it's released into the matrix, so the pink bit of the watermelon, in little packages, which we call vesicles. Think of like little balloons with like messages inside that you let go kind of thing. And then we think that these vesicles then go and find their way through the matrix, sit on somewhere where the hydroxyapatite mineral is needed, and then burst, and then you get that deposition of the mineral on the bone.
Hi, welcome to Biotech Talks. Now today with us we have Charlotte Clews. She is doing her Ph.D. at Roslin Institute, and she is investigating the molecular basis of bone mineralization. So that is what we are going to discuss today. Okay, bone mineralization, various topics related to that, like Frankenstein cells, then what is bone mineralization, and then what is bone remodeling, all of that. And she has explained bone with the example of watermelon, so it is going to be pretty interesting. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. Thank you. So, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm also doing great. So we are going to discuss about bone biochemistry. So the first thing that I want to know is the structure and composition of bone. Can you please describe the structure and composition of bone?
Yeah, so bone is kind of a weird tissue, to be honest, because it's made up of far less cells than, say, something like the liver or the skin, which obviously people know a bit more about. But cells and the way that work is still really important to the bone and its maintenance throughout kind of the person's life and stuff like that. So kind of an easy way to think about it is like a watermelon. So you've got the watermelon and you've got like the pink fleshy bit of the fruit, and then you've got the little seeds, which are the little black seeds. And the seeds would be the cells in this analogy, and the pink kind of fruity bit would be something called the matrix, which is essentially the strong bit of bone that they're all producing to make the skeleton. And it's slightly more complicated than that because some cells are kind of trapped within the matrix and then some sit on top, but for the basis of just kind of, what it looks like, that does the trick. So yeah, the bone production, there's kind of two main processes really. There's something called collagen deposition. Collagen is a really tough but kind of soft protein. And then the second is mineralization, which is essentially when you talk about the calcium and the phosphates, which are really important for bone. That's the process where all of that gets shoved in by the cells to kind of pad it out and just strengthen it. So I'm quite an artistic person, so I like to think of it as a sculpture. The bone is the sculpture. The collagen is, say, the wire frame that you kind of initially have to kind of support what you're going to then build around it. And then the hydroxyapatite, which is the mineral, is kind of the paper, whatever you're doing to make the sculpture around it. So a combination of that kind of makes the bone strong and resilient in day-to-day life.
Yeah, so what is bone mineralization?
So bone mineralization, it's a $1 million question really, because we still don't really know. And you would not think in 2021 we don't actually know how bone mineralization occurs, but we don't. We know that the mineral is produced by a specific type of bone cell, and we think it's released into the matrix, so the pink bit of the watermelon, in little packages, which we call vesicles. Think of like little balloons with like messages inside that you let go kind of thing. And then we think that these vesicles then go and find their way through the matrix, sit on somewhere where the hydroxyapatite mineral is needed, and then burst, and then you get that deposition of the mineral on the bone.
Okay, so and Another thing is, what is bone remodeling?
So bone remodeling is essentially the process of it's the maintenance of these two kind of battling processes throughout life, really. So you have a specific kind of cell called an osteoclast, which destroys old bone, and you have a specific kind of cell called an osteoblast, which creates bone. And obviously, as you run, walk, fall, get into accidents and whatnot, humans are pretty clumsy. You're gonna ruin little bits of your bone. You're gonna get microfractures. You're gonna destroy kind of the structural integrity of parts of your skeleton. So the point of the remodeling process is there's a constant turnover of new tissue being created, really, to replace old tissue which is being destroyed. So yeah, there's two main players in that. You've got the osteoblasts, which are producing it, and the osteoclasts, which are resorbing and kind of destroying damaged tissue.
So in remodeling process, all the fractures or other injuries gets repaired. That is what remodeling is.
Yeah, so it's kind of
in a broad spectrum.
Yeah, so even if you never fractured anything, hypothetically, obviously that kind of doesn't happen, then you would still, bone remodeling would still happen, but it's just a kind of, call it evolution, knowing that there are going to be little fractures in the bone. It is best to keep it turned over throughout the life of the individual, and constantly replace. And it's really good because all of the minerals are kind of recycled. So the osteoclasts go and munch it up. They're really crazy cells. They're so strange. They're huge, and they've got like loads of nuclei, which is kind of the brain of the cell. They're kind of like Frankensteins of the cell world, and they just go eating up all of the kind of damaged bone.
So your work is on bone biochemistry. So how your research can help to treat bone fractures or other bone related diseases in a better way?
Yeah, so I've just finished a master's degree at Durham University, and in that we were working with Sheffield Children's Hospital, so part of the NHS in the UK, looking at a rare form of brittle bone disease. So we were essentially taking super resolution microscopy, some really cool techniques to actually look at the cells of this patient, to see what was going on and what was going wrong. And we had an idea of what was happening, but we actually found out some pretty cool new stuff that we didn't know. And this has led on to my PhD. So I'm going to start a PhD essentially looking at what we were talking about before, the mineralization process, and whether those vesicles actually kind of contribute to the mineralization, how they are formed, essentially. So the unanswered questions of the bone biochemistry field is what I'm going to go and research. But yeah, essentially, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Brittle bone disease, especially, is a huge under-researched field, and that kind of encompasses osteogenesis imperfecta, osteoporosis and whatnot, which obviously a lot of people suffer from. So yeah, hopefully more of that in future.
So talking about bones, so what is the importance of healthy bones? If we don't maintain them, then what can happen?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a strange one because everyone tells you, oh well, you need to be doing this, you need to do that, and I'm not going to pretend to be a dietitian here, but like I say, the skeleton is one of the most under-researched aspects of the human body. You hear about brain research, brain is not very well understood, but neither is bone, and we need more people to work out what's going on there. But generally people know that calcium's important, kind of cheese, milk, all the tasty things in life, but also phosphates. you ask kind of the general public on the street and they kind of don't really know what a phosphate is, where that's from. A lot of people maybe would say like, you know, the phosphorus that you used to get on like the match, the end of matchsticks and stuff like that. But yeah, so phosphates are kind of very prevalent in high protein foods. So for both animal protein and plant protein. But if you eat animal protein, it is easier to digest and assimilate those phosphates than it is in plant protein. So that's why kind of vegans, vegetarians, you've just got to watch it a little bit more closely. And so, you know, yeah, a general balanced diet, look after yourself, exercise. There's some myths about running and kind of high intensity workouts being bad for your bones. But if you also look at the primary literature, there's evidence for and against all of this. There's some things that say it's good for your bones for strength. There's some things that say that it's bad for your bones because you're increasing the microfractures. So it's just kind of using your own initiative and knowing yourself, knowing your body, how much you can take, I think.
It was very interesting to know that we, in 2021, we still don't know how bone mineralization happens.
Yep.
And I hope you find it.
Me too. It's funny because part of the reason I'm fascinated with bone is the fact that so a lot of people don't know that there's cells in bone. You know, it kind of just looks like the wood of a tree trunk, right? You know, it's not. It doesn't look like it's living tissue. At the end of the day, the only thing that we really see of bones, unless something's gone very wrong, is the skeleton. You know, when people have died. So you don't tend to associate it with living tissue, but it's such a vibrant, constantly, you know, active part of the body that, you know, has got to be looked after as well. So, and like you say, there's a lot to find out, which hopefully we'll get.
Any other interesting fact about bone that you are fascinated with?
Fun facts about bone. I think so. I'm a cell biologist as well. So people will tell you, oh well, the bone there's like 206 bones in the human body and stuff like that. But I think the cell biology is really cool. If people want to know a little bit more about about any of this, head over to my website where we basically write kind of blogs and produce videos and stuff like that, and just general daily life of scientists. But I've got some articles on there describing a little bit more about bone cells and kind of specifically the osteoclasts are really cool. The kind of Frankenstein bones with bone cells with like 8 brains, and they've got tentacles, and they're just very, very, very cool cells. So yeah, if you want any more fun facts.
Your website, the art you do.
Yeah.
I was just looking at that and I was like, wow.
Oh.
And the photography as well.
Yeah. So the and some of my microscopy as well, we were able to actually look at different stages of this bone mineralization happening in the same image, which was really, really cool. And hopefully I'll get back to that.
Okay, so yeah, that's it.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your time.